Hello everyone. In this Framer beginner tutorial, we will create this website together step by step, and in the process touch on all the most important features and workflow hacks you need to become truly efficient in the tool that's currently regarded as the fastest and most flexible web design tool on the market. The working file will be linked in the description below so that you can follow along. Now let's waste no more time and get straight into it. All right, so the first thing I usually start with when I create a new website project is that I create a style guide. And as you can see here, I think it's an optional thing. You don't have to do it, but I do highly suggest you do it because it's just gonna save you a lot of time. It's gonna be so much more scalable in the end if you do it with this approach. So let me show you how I do it. You can see the left sidebar here. I've created a new page that I call Style Guide. If we go into this page, so I click the page, you can see that we basically have collected everything that we have or that we need for this website. So in the left corner here, I have my color styles. So if I click one of them and then I go here to the fill option in the right sidebar, you can see under styles that I've created teal, white, and blue. Now I could go into white and change the color of this. And in every instance where I've used this color style, that color is going to be changed. So you can see how scalable that is when we want to create bigger websites. So I've defined these colors. I've done a similar thing with my text styles. By the way, if you want to know exactly how I do this, then I have a video on that in the top right corner, but I'm not gonna go into too much detail here because we're gonna keep this short and sweet. Now, what I've done for the text styles is I've created my different headings. So you can see here we have the heading 1, we have the heading 2, we have our body large, body medium, and body small. And I've added them into playable frames here so that we can see what it looks like when we're scaling. And once again, I go through this in detail in the video in the top right corner. Now that's the text styles. This is also going to be super helpful when we create a big website, because if we change the style somewhere, then it's going to be changed everywhere. So very good for bigger website projects. Also, we have some components. You can see this logo type component here. In the desktop frame, it's a bit bigger than it is on the tablet or mobile frame here. Same with the light version of the logo type. And if we click into them, you can see that it's basically just one variant that is bigger, one variant that is smaller. I've done the same thing for the buttons. So you can see here we have the desktop version of this book a demo button, and then we have the mobile version or the tablet version. And once again, we're using variants to do this. And then I have some hover states for this as well. Same thing for this big button. We have a variant for the desktop, a variant for the mobile, and then hover states. So that's basically all we have. We also have just images, and these you can port in here and have as kind of your image library if you want to. You can also just upload them from your desktop. You choose however you want to do it. But the last thing that I think is pretty helpful is to bring in your reference project. So if you've created the design already inside of Figma, well, then you can use the Figma to Framer plugin to port this over, or you can take a screen dump, whatever you want to do. I've used the plugin, and actually we could make this into a working website rather quickly just by porting it over. But in this tutorial, I want to show you how to do it step by step. So that's what we're going to do. So once we've defined our style guide, the next step is to create the structure. And the good thing with Framer here is that they give us a bunch of things for free. So if we go to the Insert tab and we go to sections here, you can find a bunch of sections that are already pre-made. And the good thing with using these sections, even though they might not look exactly like the section you're trying to create, The good thing with using them is that we get responsive behavior for free, and they've already added a bunch of styling and paddings and made things just easier to work with. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to go back to my style guide. I'm going to take my reference design and go back into home here, place my reference design here, and then I'll start adding sections based on what we have here. So if I click insert again, so the first thing we have is a nav bar, so the navigation menu. So I'll just click here on this top bar nav, and it's added to my page. Pretty simple. Second thing, what's the next thing we have? We have this hero section that has a video background and it has a bit of text. So if I go into sections, we can see that we have two sections that look kind of like this. The first one doesn't have a background. It just has a colored background. The second one, though, has an image or a video. So I'll pick that one and we'll style this later. What else? We have these cards here, so like a horizontal layout. If we look down the list here, we find this, which is a horizontal layout with two cards. They don't look exactly as the ones I have, but I think it's going to be good for our use case. Then we have this, just a big text with a call to action button and some floating images here. I think this one is going to be good for that. So the header again, but without the background image or background video. And then what is the last thing? We have a footer. We can go back to navigation and we can pick this footer, even though it has a bunch of stuff that we don't need. We can just change it up. We can edit it the way we want. So here we have kind of the skeleton for our website. So with this skeleton, we can start creating the actual design here. So let's start from the top, I guess. We have the nav bar. So the nav bar is a component. You can see here, it's purple, like components in Figma, for example. If I double click into it, we go into the component. So what do we need to change here? A couple of things. First off, we don't need these links, so I'm just gonna remove them. Second of all, this button doesn't look like the buttons we have. So I'm gonna go to assets and I'm gonna drag in the button medium that I'm using. I'm gonna remove the button medium that they have. Then also they're using a different logo type. So I'm gonna go in here and take my logo type instead, put it here. We don't see it now because it's light. So I'm gonna go to the frame here, go to the side panel and remove the fill so that we can see it. This already kind of looks like the nav that I have, but I think we do need to make some more tweaks to make it more responsive in the end. But for now, I think this is fine. Maybe we could just change the paddings a bit to make it match the design better. I think I don't have a gap, but I do have some paddings on the side. So maybe we add the side paddings here. So right padding and left padding is 56. That's what I'm using. Maybe we can increase the top padding a bit, maybe set that to 40. Something like that will look good for now. I think we're gonna have to get back here to make it more responsive later. But that's the nav bar. Now, the second thing we have is, of course, the header or the hero here. So if I go to layers and I go in here, first of all, we don't need the buttons. So I'm gonna remove those. Second of all, we also need to change the positioning of this text. The good thing here is that this is going to be super easy because we're using something called stacks. Stacks is the same thing as auto layout in Figma or Flexbox in the web world. So if I go here to the layout settings, I can change the distribution to be end. So it's going to be in the bottom. And I can change the alignment to be left. So it's aligned to the left. Then I can go into these text fields here and I can change the settings, or since I have my design here, I can basically just copy paste over the text. And I think it's gonna take the text styles from that automatically. So add that. It didn't take it. So then I'll do this instead. I go to styles, I go to body medium, add that, and I'll do the same here, even though it worked. I'll add heading 1, and there we have our text styles added. And we basically have the same section now. One thing we need to do though is we need to go into the section. We need to go to our insert panel, search for video, drag in the video component here. And by default, you can see that it just adds itself as a element into the stack. I want to have this as an absolute position element in the background. So the video is going to play in the background and the text is going to be on top of it. Kind of the same thing as this overlay, actually. So I'm going to take this video. I'm going to change it to absolute position. I'm going to set it to 0 on all of these constraints. Then I'm actually going to change the C index here, which is the position it has in the hierarchy. So I'm going to move it backwards by setting 0. And then we're going to make the whole heading or the whole header or the whole hero a bit higher, a bit taller. So I'll change it to 100 VH, which is going to be the full height of our screen size. So no matter what screen size you have, it's going to take up the full screen size. So that looks kind of good. I'm gonna change the video here to be a video asset that I have. So changing the video asset like that. This overlay, we're gonna change to a blue color. So let's grab this color here and we're gonna target the overlay again, change it to blue. Then we're gonna add a style here as well. And it's gonna be a blending. And this blending is going to be changed from multiply to color, which means that it just takes the color I added as a fill here. So now it looks pretty similar. I think the text here is a bit too wide though. So we're going to go here to the width settings. I'm going to set this to fixed and I'm going to change this so that it looks more similar to our reference. I'm going to take our nav bar. I'm going to make that position absolute for now. In the top like this. So it sticks to the top and the corners. And now we have something that is starting to look pretty good. So is it still 100 VH? Yes, it is. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, it's starting to look good. It's not as high right now. So maybe we can change it like this, but maintain 100 VH, or maybe that's fine. One thing we need to change though is this color here. So I'm going to target this text. I'm going to go to color. I'm going to change to teal on that one. And there we have it. And there you could see the use case of the color styles. Very powerful. Okay, so we've done the heading here. Now I'm going to go to the second section we have, or the third actually. The first thing I'm going to do is to change the gap to 56 because I think that's what we have here. Yes. And also the padding to 56. So 56, 56. This thing is going to take up the full width, but we're going to change the max width to 1440 so it actually takes up the full width. And we can change the width of our whole canvas here to 1440 so that it actually resembles what we have. And what do we need here? Maybe we go card by card here. So I take the first card and I'm going to add some padding. So let's see, what do we have in padding here? We have 40 to all sides. And what do we have in gap? 48. And we have 56 in radius. So let's take this card. Let's add just a fill for now so that we can see it. I'm going to change the radius to 56. I'm going to change the gap to 48 and the padding to 40. Something like that. I'll remove the image in here. I'll change this heading to be heading 2. And I'll remove this text. But first, I'll actually drag in a button medium in here. I'll remove the text. I'll take this card again. I'll change the height to 700 pixels because that's what we have. And once again, since it's a stack, we can go to our layout settings, change the alignment. So it's going to be aligned to the left, and it's going to distribute itself to the end. So these things end in the bottom. I'm going to go into this other stack here because we have first the card stack, but then we have the content stack. And in the content stack, we can change the gap. So the gap between this text and this button. Let's change that to 40, maybe 48, like that. I'm gonna copy this text so we have the same copy, like that, and make sure that the width of this text is fill. So it fills up its container, like that. Now, the last thing I want to do for this is to change from a fill color to an image. So I'll choose an image here. Let's take card image 1, change that. And there we have the layout. So now I could just take this and I'll call it card. Maybe we call this one cards. And I'll copy the card, paste it again, remove the previous one, and there we have 2 cards. For this one, I'm just going to change the image. So I'll take card image 2, and there we have our cards. Pretty simple. Over to the next section. Here we have just a button and a heading. So I'll take this text, I'll change it to heading 1, and we'll change the color to be blue. I'll take our button up here in assets, button large. I'll drag that in. I'll remove these buttons. I'll target this again, and we can see we don't have a content stack in here, so we can use just the header wrapper here, the outer container, and we can set the gap. The gap is going to determine how far these items are from each other. So we have that. We're going to change the padding to 56 here as well, even though it doesn't really matter at this stage because we just have centered content in here. And there we have our section. Maybe we want to make it a bit taller, so maybe 1000 pixels. And then we're actually going to add the assets into here. I am just going to grab these assets, steal them, put them in here. And what you see happening here, once again, because it's a stack, they just stack on top of each other. So I will change from relative here with all of them targeted and change that to absolute. So now they just float around on the canvas like this. So I will redistribute them like that. I'll take this so that we have the same copy. I will change this from being fit to fixed in width, and we will decrease the width a bit like that maybe, and I'll align it to the center. And there we have something that looks pretty similar. So that was that section. Now we have the last section, which is the footer. And that's another component pre-made by Framer. So if I click into this component, we come to this page. And here you can see that we have a bunch of stuff we don't need. So I'm just going to target this. I'll remove this whole thing. We don't need that. I'll go into this one. I'll remove all the padding that we have. I'll actually remove the border that we have here. I'll click on the outer frame. We don't need a gap. We do need padding, but maybe it's just 56 overall in padding. The width is fine like that for now. Let's see, do we have anything else we can do? This has a max width of 1000 right now. I think 1440 is what we set for the other items, so I'll change to 1440. Here, I want our logo, so I'll go back to assets, just drag in logo dark in this case, remove this one, and there we have something. I'll change for tablet, I'll change the padding a bit, just change this to 40 maybe, and for mobile, maybe we just do 24. And actually for mobile and for tablet, we're going to change the variant of the logo to the smaller one, just like this. So there we have our scalable or responsive version of this footer item as well. So what we want to do now is to make our design responsive. And since we used Framer's own sections and Framer's own components, we're going to get a lot of help with this. So if I go here to desktop, I go to the plus and I click tablet, we get a tablet view that is basically already responsive. We have some minor tweaks to do, but let's start with the nav because these tweaks are going to be pretty simple. So I double click the component. I go in here. I can see the tablet version. The one thing I'm going to do is just change the padding here. So I'll do 40 in padding. I'll change these variants here. Remember, we had variants for our logo type and for our buttons. I'm going to change the variants in here to mobile and here, mobile. Same thing in the mobile version. Padding, 24 pixel, sounds good to me. And since we changed it in the previous one, they're already changed. Now, in this case, we have a hamburger button here as well. So we could have an open state for our mobile menu. And if we want to use that, so even though we have just one call to action, let's use it and see what it looks like. I'll hide this button because it's going to be visible when we open the menu instead. Doesn't make sense from a UX perspective, but I want to show you how it works. So visible, no. I'm going to actually, I think the padding is fine here, but I'm going to add different padding inside of this to 24 pixels. I'm going to add some gap in between, and maybe we'll add a background fill, maybe set it to 25%. Maybe we even add border in the bottom. Yep, bottom border, and give that some opacity as well, like that. So now, just to make sure it works, that's actually the mobile version. So before we get to that, let me finish the tablet version, and then you'll see how the mobile hamburger menu works. But yeah, so the second step, we've fixed our nav bar here. Now I want to go into the header and just change the padding here. So, the gap should probably be 24 pixels. Padding down to 40, so we're consistent for tablet version. I'm going to go into our cards here, change the direction here from horizontal to vertical, like that. I'm going to change the gap between them to be 40, and then I'm going to change the padding of this outermost frame to be 40 as well. We're not using a gap here, so we can set that to 0, and that looks kind of good. And this last section here, or the second to last, actually looks pretty good. Maybe we change the gap a bit, maybe 40. Padding, we could change that, even though it doesn't really matter at this point. 40, reposition these things maybe like this. Where do we have the other one? It's probably here somewhere. Yes, let's bring it to the center. Here, bring it in like that. And there we have those as well. And then it's just a footer, which once again is a component. So I double click it, I go into it, I change the padding to 40. And for the mobile version, I change the padding to 24. Also going to change this from desktop, so the logo dark, to mobile on both these versions. And there we go. Now we're going to go and add a phone version. And you can see that this is almost from the start perfect. Now I have to go in here because you can see the hamburger menu it doesn't really match this color here. This gray color doesn't match the background we have here. So maybe we want to change this to be white instead. So I'll target all of these lines here, change them to white. Maybe on mobile, to make it a bit more UX friendly, we could add a fill color to this, drag down the opacity, so like 15 or something. Just so that we can see it a bit better. Well, that doesn't actually help. So I'm going to go back in here. Let's remove that and let's just stick with it as it is now. Gonna take this header once again, change the padding, do the same thing here. Template cards, change padding, go into the cards container, change the gap. Maybe we want to actually change the height of these cards as well. So I'll go back to the tablet, see if we change that to 500. And for these, maybe 400, like that. And maybe in this section, we decrease the height or just the overall size of these. We can even change the position of them like this. And there we have something. Change the padding, change the gap, maybe 32. And there we have our responsive design. Let's see how it looks when we play it. So here's the desktop version. We have all of our elements that we added hover states to. Looks good. Drag it down to tablet. Here it looks good too. Boom. Down to mobile. Here we have our mobile menu. We didn't change the color of the cross here, but that's fine. And this works. And yeah, there we have the responsive design. Now, the last thing we want to add to the website is some delighting details. And with Framer, you can create basically any kind of animation and any kind of crazy interaction. We're going to keep it simple here so that you can just get started with animations in Framer. I will zoom into our desktop frame again. I will target these text fields here. And then I'll go to effects in the right side panel. I'll click plus, then I'll click appear. So this is going to be an appear animation. So when the page appears and loads, we have these presets. So I could say we're going to slide in this text from the left. And if I click here on effect, we can change what it's going to look like. So it's going to go from 0% opacity. It's going to scale up, and we're going to have an offset where it comes from the left. And the transition is going to be a spring curve. I can change the transition here. So maybe we make it a bit more stiff. We add some more damping to it. We make it heavier. And then if we go outside here, hit play, refresh, you can see here that we get this text animation. We could add different animations to the different text fields so that it's a bit staggered. So click here on appear, effect, and we could change this to be delayed with 0.5 seconds. Now, if we play it, you can see that it's delayed like that. Pretty cool. So that's a simple text animation. We could also make these cards here fade in, so an appear animation. So on appear, they're going to scale in with a 0% opacity at the start, and they're going to scale from 0.5, maybe just from 0.8, so it's a slight scale. Maybe they even rotate a bit. Let's go crazy here. Add a 3D effect, so we can change the axes here. So 10 in y-axis, and maybe we give it some offset on the y-axis, so they come from the bottom. Let's say 25. Change the spring here again, add some more damping, change the mass, just playing around here. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, yeah, they kind of flip in like that. And you could play around with this and make it as cool as you want. Now, one thing I want to mention is the trigger here. Now, they showed before we even got to that section. If we want to change that, we can say that when this section is in view, that's when it's going to play. So when we come here, it's going to play. Now, what we need to change here as well, if you think it plays too quickly, is the viewport alignment here. So maybe when the viewport is in the middle of the section, that is when it plays. So like this. So that's for the cards. For these, I can see a cool parallax animation in front of me. So I'll go to effects here. I'll click, I'll say scroll speed, and I'll change the scroll speed here to 140 maybe. And let's see what it looks like. Oh, where are they? So these two scroll too fast. So maybe they are at 110 because they had already scrolled past that section when I reached it. So let's see. There we go. And now this section is cut off. So what we could do here is to set for this outer section here, I'll go to the visible, should be set to yes, of course, but the overflow should be set to visible as well. So now that we scroll down, you're gonna see them just scrolling upwards in this perfect parallax manner. Now, if you want to dig even deeper into Framer, I do have a full playlist with tutorials somewhere around here. Now, until the next one, have a great life. We'll talk soon. Ciao.